Okay, so we looked at a website the other day that was called Mission Minded, and their About Us or Our Team page, and they had the circular profile images. We want to duplicate this. We may or may not want to actually have the mouse over for the text, but we want the circular images. So we're going to focus on that today. We've already looked at the divs, so we can see here that the image itself is actually an inline style, and as I stated in class, that is not how that's not how you should do it. All of your styles should actually be in a style sheet, and so we're going to fix that part of it. We might actually use the image and then just control things by the image tag. We'll find out as we go along here. I've lost the. I had an XD file that was for this website that we started out with, but I've lost it. So I kind of recreated something in Figma here. And so this is what we're looking at. We're going to do an about page. It's going to have an image. It's going to have a full name and then some text underneath of it. So the first thing we're going to do is open up. I already have Atom open. I already have GitHub open. It's always a good idea to fetch. Make sure there's no changes that you've recorded. So I clicked fetch. Nothing's changed. I don't need to pull anything down. And then one of the things we haven't really talked about in class, but is kind of important when you're doing this, is the branches. Now, we're doing absolutely everything on the master branch. But when you're doing something that's maybe questionable or that you're not real sure if you want to keep it, it's always a good idea to create a branch. And what this does is it makes a copy of where you are at and creates a working section. So if you really screw things up, you just delete that branch and you go back to that saved point in time. So I'm going to click on the down arrow here and I'm going to say, well, I already have it. I listed about page. That sounds like a good thing. I did this and then deleted the branch. So I'm going to say new branch and name is about page and I'm going to create branch. Notice that this is now about page. Your branch is about page. Everything that we have is still here, but we are on a different branch. Now, I could publish this, but I don't really want it to go up to the public. I just want to work on it locally. So I'm going to leave everything as it is for right now. And to start with, I'm going to take a look at the index file. I've already got the mystyle.css. I am going to create a new page, and it's going to be named About. I've already done work on the index page. I have certain things set up that I want to keep. In this case, I want to keep all this top. I want to keep the header. I want to keep the aside and the footer. So instead of recreating all that in another file, I am going to simply do, I have index open. I'm going to go up to file and I'm going to click save as. And then since this is about page, I'm going to keep it simple and I'm just going to say about.html. Click save. And now I am working in the about.html file. Now, I want to show the benefit of keeping style sheets separate. And in this instance, absolutely everything's going to be the same, the text and how you want the text styled. But we're going to be doing some odd things with the images. So I want to create a separate style sheet just for the about page. And what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to create how to handle images on this page without disturbing how images are handled anywhere else. So I already have a link to a style sheet, so I'm just going to copy that line. It makes life easier. Paste it back in. And since this is for the about page, let's name this about.css. So it's going to be loading my style It's going to get all the default, everything for the web page, how things look. And then it's going to load the about, which is going to override, if I have anything already defined, it's going to override that. So anything I put in the about is going to be for the about page. And it's only going to add to the default styling for the website in general. Now, of course, I have an about.css, but I don't have it in my styles. So I'm going to say right click, go to styles, right click, and then do about.css. It's empty because we haven't done anything yet, which is good. And since this is an about page and it is going to have an image on it, I need images. As mentioned before, the naming conventions are that your styles go into a styles folder or a CSS folder. Really, you can name it anything you want, but if you make naming simple, then that makes life easier in the future. The same thing goes with the images. All the images should be in a single folder for your website. And in this case, I'm going to do a new folder and I'm going to name it images. Now, I went out and downloaded some images from Facebook, and I hope I didn't delete them all. So I'm going to go to downloads, and these are the images, well, all but one of them, but I'm just going to copy all of them over. I'm going to copy them, go to where I have the wireframe to HTML. I've got it shortcutted on the sidebar so it's easier to find. Go to images, and I'm going to paste these in. So we're going to start with just getting that image to load. So under section, under div, this is where this first paragraph is. We're going to take that first paragraph out, and we are going to add an image tag. The way we do an image is the tag is img. We tell it where the source is, and the source is the folder name, images, and then the name of the image. So these are like really crazy named. So let's pick one of these out. Here. This is, I took this with the camera. I was holding the camera out. Really, I'm not that serious. So I'm going to rename this because who wants to use this as a name, right? Who wants to, that is nasty name. Nasty. So I'm just going to do so serious. Okay. And now I can go back to my about page, and it's now image as. I caught that before, it was a mistake. And so serious. Notice the second S is capitalized because that is how it is in the images folder. So serious.jpg. Every single image, in order for it to validate, every single image needs an alt tag. Now, if it's just decorative, that alt tag could be just an empty tag. But really, the alt tag should describe what the picture is. So this is, we'll do self-portrait. Or, looking serious for work. Okay. And that's all we have to do for an image. So let's take a look at this and see what it looks like. I have a new tab open here, and I'm going to go to File, Open File, and I am already in the wireframe to HTML, and I want to open up the About. So click Open. Oh, it still looks the same as what it did before. So let's go ahead and save this and refresh. And oh my goodness, that's a huge freaking picture. And what do? Well, first off, I want it to be circular, and I don't want it to be that big. So how do we control an image? We could do an actual control for the image, but it's actually easier to control the image by the container that it's in. So I'm going to say div equal div, and I'm going to say class equals about image, or we can do about dash image. So we'll do about image, all one word, and then I am going to control the image by controlling the class about image. Make sense? Kind of a little bit crazy, right? We're going to save this, and then I'm going to open up this about.css. And so the first thing I want to do is we're going to create a class, or we're going to create a rule for the about image. So dot for class, about image. And notice how it gives a suggestion because it sees the about image class in the HTML. So this is really nice. About image, and I want to keep this smaller. In this wireframe here, this is actually 200 by 200. So let's go with that. About image width 200 pixels, height 200 pixels, and we'll save that. And wow, that like didn't do anything. Well, it did, because this is now, the text is now up above this. But that is because I haven't controlled, so it's still displaying the image. The image takes up whatever size it is. So not only do I have to control the div that the image is in, but then I also have to tell the image to only be the size of the div. So we do that. We start with the about image because we only want to affect the image is in the about image div. So dot for class, about image. And then we're going to affect the image, the tag that is within the div that has the about image class. And on this, we'll just say width equals 100%, and not equals, it's colon 100%. Save this, and now when we go back over here and refresh, much better, right? It's contained, it's small, but it's not centered. So how do we do that? We go back, and this about image, and this is what makes it easier. With the image, it's difficult to control the centering and where it is because it's an inline element. If we put it within a div and then control the div, we have a better chance. So I'm going to say margin, and the margin is, I can do left and right, top, bottom. So margin left, auto, and I'm going to do margin right, auto. And what this does is it says, okay, I know how wide the image is, or I know how wide the div is because I've told it how wide the div is. Now I need to add enough margin on each side of that to, it basically does the math, splits it for you, and puts it in the center. So I'm going to save, go back over here, refresh, and now we've got a centered image. Awesome. We're getting somewhere, right? Now, the next thing to do is to get that circular effect. We want the image to be in a circle. So let's do, we're going to do a quick search. Actually, let's do this. How are they doing this circular image? Well, right here, we have a height. Oh, okay, so they're doing 200, border radius 50%. So that's basically saying whatever it's 50%, so it's rounding it half and half. Let's just copy that line, and we'll do border radius 50%. Save it, and let's look and see what we have. Well, didn't change anything, right? But it did. If you notice, these little lines out here, notice that before, so to make this easier, I'm going to actually open up Inspector on this page, and I am going to select the image itself, and then I'm going to click the About, because this is where we've been doing the changes. Watch this right up here, okay? When I take away the border radius, that black is now, it's going from a circle. But the image is still just displaying. It's displaying outside of it because it doesn't know any better. Well, there's actually something we can do about that. And it's overflow. And I always have to kind of look this up. Luckily, we can try this automatically. We'll say overflow hidden. I think that's what I want. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to refresh this. And now, basically, I'm saying anything that falls outside of that div, just don't display it. It's gone. It doesn't exist. So now we've got a nice circular image that's centered on the page. The only thing that we don't have is that spacing at the top. I wanted it to come down about 10 pixels off of the header so that we can get some differentiation there. Well, once again, that's easy enough to do. We just do margin top 10 pixels. We save it, hit refresh, go back, hit refresh. Notice that now we're off of this header a little bit, and that's what we want to do. Now, I can take these three lines here, I can take these same three lines and turn them into a single line. I can do that by just saying margin, and this is basically a shortcut code. Margin, and then I give it from its top, right, bottom, left. It's going clockwise, starting at noon. So it's 12 o'clock, top, 3 o'clock, right, 6 o'clock, bottom, 9 o'clock, left. Well, on the top, I want 10 pixels. On the right, I want it to be auto, if I can type, keyboard. And on the bottom, I don't want anything, so 0. And then on the left, I want auto again. If I do this, I can take these lines out by putting them in a comment. Save this, go back, hit refresh, and we've got the same thing. Now, why would I do that? There's no real reason to do that other than it just saves you from typing out 3 lines or 4 lines. You can type it out in 1 line. Okay. Now, I can also shortcut this even more because this, if I leave off these last 2, what it assumes is that if you don't have it defined, it will define it for you. So if you have the top defined but don't have the bottom defined, it will assume you want the same on both. So 10 pixels auto will give me a 10 pixel margin top and bottom and give me auto left and right, which is really what we want. It's even shorter. Nobody wants to type a bunch of stuff. Click on save. Go back, hit refresh. Now we've got that. So that's a real easy way to do the image with the circle. So I made a couple quick notes. What I forgot to do was the title for the page, the H1 or header for the image, and then I want to merge these changes back into master and finally hit commit. This should all be pretty straightforward. We've done it before. I'm going to go to About, and in the title, instead of wireframe to HTML, I am going to say About. And for this, I could actually put in my own name. So we'll do Mark Mace. And then that'll change the title. And then down here, underneath the image, or underneath the div for the image, I am going to put an H1 that says Mark Mace. And close the H1 tag. We'll go ahead and leave the paragraph as it is because it's just filler text at this point. I don't necessarily need to put in a bunch of stuff. I will take out the span tag because it just doesn't show anything. And then let's talk about merging this back in. First, we'll do a save. Go over to the page, hit refresh, and now notice that the Mark Mace is actually to the left. We want it centered. Once again, this is where having the individual about, if we decided that we wanted this for every page, if we wanted every H1 tag centered, we would do this in the My Style page. If we want it just for About CSS, then we would actually just put it in the about.css. For this example, we're going to do the H1 that is in the About page, that is in the main area. We're going to center it. It might not be how we want it to show up on other pages, but it is how we want it to show up on the About page. In order to do that, I'm going to look at the code real quick. And H1, Mark Mace, it's in the section. So let's go ahead and on the About CSS, it says after the images. So we'll put the H1 here. We'll do text, align, center. Save it real quick. Go back. Refresh, and now it's centered. The one thing that I do want to look at, though, is this font is how large. If I look at the computed here, I can scroll down through here, and the font size is 30 pixels. Well, in the wireframe that we had, our font size is actually 48. The default font size is 16 pixels. 48 is 3 times. So we can do this multiple ways. We can say font size, and we can specify that we want it at 48 pixels. Or this would be the same thing, font size, assuming that the font size for the web page is 16 pixels. That is the default. It would be 3 EM. And actually, it's always better to use 3 REM because it's relative to the root, or it's root EM. So both of these are basically, if I save this right now, and I go back, font's going to be larger. I can go back down here and see that the font size is 48, which is what I wanted. If I look at the styles itself, notice that the 48 pixels is crossed out when the 3 REM is in. If I take this out, it doesn't change the size. If I take both of them out, of course it does. But that just shows that the last rule wins. And since I want it to be relative, if I set it at 48, it's pretty fixed. We'll do font size 3 REM, save it, call it good. Now, the last thing to do is we've got a bunch of changes here. We've added images. Well, actually, yeah, we've added images. So let's go ahead and do, we created about page, created about. Created about page and added images. And I'm going to say commit to about page. So this is putting all the changes in this branch. But I still don't want this extra branch up there. I want this all to be back in the main. So the way we do that is we can simply drop down. And we want to change our we don't want to leave these changes in the about page. We want to merge it back into our main so that it's a singular entity. And the way we do that, notice if I click down, it doesn't actually list the about, but it was because there was this filter. Now I can see master, so I'm switching over to master, and then I go back and I say choose a branch to merge into master. So this is taking the branch that I just created and is going to bring all those changes back into master. I click about. So this is going to take its merging about page into the master branch. I still see the about page. But now when I look at the history, I see this. I see the created about and I see all these changes I made. And it's all in my master branch. So now I can go back, and of course I get an authentication failed because that's the way things work. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to go to the GitHub desktop. I'm going to go to preferences. I'm going to sign out, and then I'm going to click sign back in. So my username is and then I'm going to put in my password, if I can remember it. Oh, I got the incorrect password. Put in my username, and I'm going to put in my password, and click sign in. Aha. So that seems to have worked. Let's go ahead and try this again. Okay, I've now committed it back up. We have, if we look at GitHub, we should now see more folders, and we see the about. That's awesome. All right. Okay. There's now, if we want to do the mouse over stuff, that's another story. So what do we do? How do we do that? Well, this one's already been like 20 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this tutorial short. And I am going to do the next one with putting the image over, perhaps. All right. I hope you enjoy it. Have fun.